All right, guys, we're going to get started here again. This is the second half of our discussion this evening. Should be about another half hour, and then you guys can hang out and talk all you want. But right now, I've got two folks from Devil's Backbone who I'm sure you guys already know, Hayes Humphreys and Steve Crandall. How about a round of applause for these guys? Yay!
Round of applause.
Thank you for hosting us. This is awesome. We really appreciate it.
Happy to have you guys.
So tonight, Steve and Hayes are going to discuss how they've been able to grow so rapidly over the last couple of years. In their first year of production here, outside of the brew pub, they produced about 10,000 barrels, which is actually just astonishing in itself. I mean, I see a lot of breweries start up at varying sizes, but 10,000 is certainly pretty remarkable. But since then, grown to 25,000 barrels last year, and forecasting about 40 or 50,000 this year. So, a quick ramping up to get to that sort of larger regional level. So they're going to sort of talk about all the complexities that have come along with that, all the challenges, and how they've been able to sort of maintain a nice little culture here alongside all that growth. So I'll just kind of start by tossing it out. I've offered sort of the quick talking points, but let's start with you, Steve. How'd the company get started in the brew pub, and how has it come this far since?
Well, I've been in the building business my whole life for 30 years, and I bought a piece of property, 100 acres in Nelson County at the base of the ski resort, Wintergreen, and I just thought that a brew pub might work well there. And I had fallen in love with craft beer actually about 1985. My wife and I went skiing in northern Italy, and a friend of mine that had been over skiing in Europe a bunch, I asked him, I said, what am I going to take back from this trip? The culture, the Italian people, the food, and he said, the beer. And I was like, the beer, you got to be kidding. I'm 57 years old. I went to college, I graduated from high school in 75. We didn't have craft beer around then. And, Bud Tall Boys and PBR, and we were happy. Well, actually, by the time we went on that ski trip, I was a gin and tonic guy, right? So first night out, we went down to the town, little Cortina there, and there was a little bar there, and I went inside, and they served this beer called Weinstoffen. Weinstoffen is the oldest brewery in the world, established in 1050, and it was a Hefeweizen, and it was in the stein, and I can remember just lifting that stein up in the glow. It glowed, and it touched my lips, and I had an absolute epiphany. And subsequent to that trip, I do a lot of hunting and hiking and traveling out west. I started seeing these little breweries start popping up in different places. And one thing that really shocked me, I was in a sort of a little tiny town in Montana one time, and they had a little bar there, and I went inside, and they had 15 taps of beer on it. I couldn't believe it, because out east here, what we were used to seeing, we'd see 3 or 4 taps of beer, and of course they were all microbrews, and so the idea sort of started fomenting that Virginia, at the base of a ski resort, deserved a brew pub, and so that's where the idea came from. Bought the property. We're going to develop it into a partially residential commercial operation. Wanted an anchor business. The brew pub sounded like a good idea. People told us, well, that business is never going to work. Nothing ever works at the bottom of the mountain. It's never worked. And lo and behold, we built it, and things just started taking off. And we weren't alone. Nelson County, one stoplight county, 14,000 people. Literally, I got the book from the Brewers Association on how to build a brewery, and the first page in there said, first thing you need to do is start with a 15-mile radius, 50,000 people. Well, we had 14,000 people in Nelson County, but again, we had irrational exuberance or whatever to build this thing, and we built it. And then all of a sudden, down the road from us, actually we had one brewery start up, a brew pub, Blue Mountain, started before we did, and then another one came along, Wild Wolf, and subsequent Blue Mountains built another one, Barrel House. We have 12 wineries, a cidery, several distilleries. And as these things started getting built, I thought, oh my gosh, it's going to take away business from us. The reality was business kept going up and up and up, and it became sort of a focal point for people coming in the area and the region to come out. Hey, there's 3-4 breweries on, you know, in a short distance and out in the country in the mountains, and that it just exploded from there.
Sure. So then you guys, you know, like we heard earlier tonight, you guys got this land, you built a production facility, started moving into packages that were out on and off premise accounts, grocery chains, everything else. Brought along this gentleman here to sort of run operations for you, and you've grown from 10,000 to hopefully 40,000 plus barrels this year if you know
Now
things.
you said it, we have to do
Yeah,
it.
things go well. But that's not easy. So what's enabled you guys to sort of grow so rapidly? And Hayes, I think you might be able to speak to that.
I mean, the first thing, and it's cliche, but obviously the beer is the first thing that enabled it. I mean, the beer is the reason that we're here, the fact that we were able to go out, you know, to the Great American Beer Festival and the World Beer Cup and put our beers up there against everybody else in the country and come home in some of the categories and take some medals. I mean, that gave us, you know, notoriety that certainly was well beyond what a small brewery in Nelson County, you know, would have gotten otherwise. And so that was kind of the first step. You know, Steve, one thing I can say for Steve is we never cut any corners. And so we knew to keep making the quality of beer that was winning those awards, we had to go out and we had to get the best quality equipment we could. We had to find the best people that we could. I was an exception to that rule, but after me, we found the best people that we
Exactly,
could.
exactly.
And-
I taught him a lot, by the way.
Hold on. There we go.
But
You know, my business plan, when I first went to the banks to get money to build the phase one, I call it, this production facility,
you
stated,
just called it a brewery then. Now it's
Yeah.
phase one. But
yeah, now it's phase one, was we were going to brew 30,000 barrels in 10 years, and that was what we went after, and all the numbers worked, and the bank loaned us money through a guaranteed loan, and we ended up hitting those numbers in year 2, at the end of year 2. So it was very gratifying.
Sure. So how'd you guys do it? I mean, it was 10 years reduced to 2. So how much of that was the craft segment growing, and how much of that was you guys kind of, you know, pushing on the pedal a little bit?
There's no one answer. Obviously, our wholesaler partners were a huge piece of it. You know, our wholesalers have done really well by us. They've gone out and they've, you know, pushed us locally on-premise, off-premise independence. They've also given us great access to chain placements. You know, the timing was great, as anyone here sitting in this room. I mean, this is still a really ripe time to start a brewery in Virginia, and I think we're all experiencing that. I mean, when we came along, which was not very long ago, there weren't that many other breweries in Virginia, but there were some very successful breweries in Virginia like Legend and Star Hill, and so there was some examples out there to follow. Obviously, we have a great relationship with the county. We were able to build this building. And
Access to capital,
yeah,
pretty
access
critical.
to capital
Yeah.
is big. And, you know, our wholesalers have kind of, you know, pulled us along. You know, the
Yeah,
demand, the
you can't
demand's always
emphasize
been
that
there.
enough. Our distributor partners have really been amazing. And I know there's in lots of parts of the country and in the craft beer scene, there's always sort of an animosity or something amongst distributors, and I can certainly understand that in lots of cases, but we were very fortunate that we made a lot of right decisions when we started out, and had really good support from our distributors.
Yeah, I mean,
So what was that decision-making process like
So
when you were?
I would say to that one thing that I think that we've done, and certainly was evidenced by selecting wholesalers, was, you know, there's that cliche of starting with the end in mind, and we knew, or we had some idea that over time we wanted to penetrate Virginia fairly well. We wanted to get chain placements. We wanted, you know, to be a bigger brewery, and so we looked for wholesalers that we thought could support that, even if we weren't there today.
Right.
And when we looked around, that really helped us with our wholesaler decision, and that's something that we've continued to do. Is sort of every so often, once a quarter, more or less. I wish we did it more, but we sit down and we think about where we want to be in a year, where we might be in a year, where we might be in 5 years, and we just keep replanning the business, and we make decisions today based on where we want to be 2-3 years down the road. And so, you know, the wholesaler selection is a good piece of that, because, you know, there are wholesalers out there that arguably were potentially better wholesalers for what we were in year one, but who we're with now is who we want to be with in the long run, and being with them early on, that's where that pull came from. They were able to generate that demand because that's what they do well.
Right, right. So when you're selecting those wholesalers, is there a checklist that you're working off of? Obviously, you're looking towards the long term, but I mean, what sorts of things were really important for you in their values that sort of meshed with your brewery values?
A lot of the distributors that we've signed on with, most all of them are AB distributors, and I don't know if they have a better personality than the Miller Coors guys or not, but it just seemed we meshed. They were good guys, We hung out with them, and we were analyzing what they could do for us, but it just seemed to fall in place. And one of the critically important things is these guys all in their individual territories are hometown guys, and they support the home communities in many ways, and they know the different retailers and on-premise guys intimately well, and there's no way we could duplicate that. And so it was a very easy thing for us to do, and maybe we were lucky, I don't know, but it certainly worked out well.
But there was also passion for the brand early on. I mean, they called us in some ways. We were working back and forth, but a lot of our wholesalers have called us, and I think that's I guess one thing that I think is useful is once you give those distribution rights, especially in a state like Virginia, they own you. And so rushing to give away your rights before you know whether somebody's really interested in giving your brand the love that you have for it is dangerous. And so, the fact that we didn't go statewide immediately, we went market by market, we went with local guys, and that makes the guys next door more interested. Their ears prick up and they start calling, and it, it gives you potentially a little more leverage, but it also lets, you really, they have to prove to you that they believe in your brand. If they believe in your brand, they're going to get behind it. If you shoehorn yourself into their portfolio, you may not get the love that you think you deserve.
There's certainly a lot more sophisticated ways of picking distributors. I know New Belgium has, this huge list and checkoff. We weren't that sophisticated, so we sort of did a gut check with these guys, and it worked out.
We're trying to get there, right, Jen?
Yeah.
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 So how have you guys been able to sort of cultivate that relationship with them over the years, even amidst all these, new entrants to the category, all these new brands that are out there? How are you still able to have so much focus with them and keep growing like you do?
We support them, and we support them with sales guys in the field. Event-wise, in Virginia, we're in the hundreds of events already scheduled this year that we're going out in their territory supporting what they're doing. And we have developed some relationships, very personal relationships with some of them, and that's a very positive aspect for doing business, and it's worked out.
Yeah, I mean, if you leave it to them to build your brand for you, they're going to build the brand they want. But if you get in there and partner with them, put your guys on the street, you're out there with them all the time, and help guide them, then it shows them that you're there for them. You don't expect them to do all the work. You understand that you've still got work to do once the beer leaves your door. And you get a lot more control over the end product, which is what you want. I mean, there's, if you just ship it out the door and then you're not happy with the results, you really don't have anyone to blame but yourself.
Right. So let's take a step back now and talk a little bit just about your growth over the last few years. Your original business plan called for 30,000 barrels in 10 years, and obviously moving beyond that now here in 2014 in your third year of production. Do you see that as rapid growth?
Yeah, I see it as rapid growth.
Feels fast.
Yeah, no, it certainly is rapid growth. We're reinventing things pretty frequently here. There's a lot of elements to growth that have to be looked at. I mean, staffing is certainly a huge one. Getting enough materials in when you need them. Contracts for hops and malt, and putting the right people in the right seats is critically important. Probably one of the better moves for our expansion was hiring somebody like Hayes, a Darden School grad that is super number geeky guy, that that can drill down into
True.
this stuff. I mean, he's giving me reports. I'm like, where are you getting this information from? And
I'm making it up mostly.
yeah, he is, but I believe it, and so far it's working. But that was very important. Also critically important, just having a breadth of people that can do many things very well. My wife does our marketing, and she's very good at a lot of she works with our different people putting the packaging together, and that's been a very big part of our visual. Also, and maybe I'm stepping out of the question here a little bit, but the ability to have that brew pub along with the production facility has been a great part of our branding and sort of keeps us true to who we are. That's the heart of really our business and who we are. And we support all the outdoor activities and things like that out of the brew pub, and it's done well for us that way.
Right, and so you definitely have that piece of the business as well, and you're growing really rapidly here on the production side. What do you risk when you grow that fast? And I'm thinking, operationally, with regards to just the actual product going out the door, or things that are happening in the brewery, structurally with the way you're sort of set up, sales-wise, marketing-wise, and just culture-wise. Brewing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at some point. What do you risk culturally here?
I mean,
You looking at me?
I mean, there's a lot of risk. I mean,
Yeah.
I look at a lot of our crew back there. I mean, we risk burnout / have flirted with burnout. I think when times get tough, and you can't bring in brewers or production staff on command. You have the staff that you have, and if demand ticks up all of a sudden, those are the guys that the crunch falls on. And so making sure that if you can't fix the situation in the instant, that you've got a plan to address the situation in the long term. Learning from your mistakes is really big. You really should, only be making a mistake once, and especially at the expense of the people who are brewing the beer and making the product. Overall product quality is a risk if you're going to grow quickly, and I think we've mitigated that risk to an extent by not going far geographically, so we're able to control a little better.
And we've also had pretty good lab assistance.
Yeah, from day one. I mean, we've had
Yeah.
our head brewer Nate Olwine
Yeah.
is a micro guy and has shouldered a lot of that, and we've continually improved that process. But we're not sending beer cross country. We're not shipping pallets randomly state by state, and so we're not so worried about out of code beer. Most of the beer that's out there is within our grasp, and because we do have this network of salespeople out there, they're seeing it. If we have an out of code, we can find it fairly easily, and so I think that product quality is always a risk when you grow quickly.
Right. I have this question written here. What's been the biggest challenge as you've grown, and how have you overcome it? And maybe you'll answer that, but I'd like to ask a slightly different question, because you brought up only making a mistake once. Has there been a mistake that you're able to share that you've only made once and you've learned for, something that really sticks out in your mind as saying, this was a critical point in our company development or maturity, that we said, okay, we made this mistake, and now we're learning from it and we're moving forward, and it's helped you get to where you are now?
Any suggestions? I think this isn't a mistake that we've only made once, but I think that we've repeatedly addressed it. But we're constantly, we have not been able to keep up with demand, and that's affected every piece of the business, from the brewing side, where we have a range of acceptable fermentation schedules, and for a while there we were running at the minimum range, and as capacity came back online, we've taken it back up, and we've realized that, hey, we really like the product a lot better at the maximum rather than the minimum, and so we're making sure that we're not going to do that again in the future. On the sales side, 3 years in a row we're going to our wholesalers and our retailers, and we're out of stock, and they get upset, but people understand because there's a plan to address it, and so
But that seems more like a challenge than a mistake.
Yeah,
Sure.
it is a challenge. I mean, we sit down with our distributor partners at the end of every year and project out next year, and we get, and it's best guess, and no, not from us, but from them. They're trying to guesstimate, and we've always underestimated where we were going, and usually by January 15th, the distributors are calling us back and saying, dude, we way underestimated what we're going to do. And by then, by January 15th, we've already sort of put all the chess pieces in place, and we've got allocations for everybody, and now they're saying, we're off 20%, and that's been challenging. So probably the biggest mistake, if you can call it a mistake, is we haven't had enough capacity. We haven't exceeded demand with capacity. And it's a place we've been trying to get to. We just haven't been able to get there yet. And it's a place that we're hopefully looking to take care of here in the next year.
And that's a tricky, tightrope to sort of walk, because
a lot of
you don't
people
want
have
to
that similar experience, I'm sure, in here, the other breweries.
And you don't want to overextend yourself and have excess capacity. But is that something that you see out in the space in general as being something that all craft brewers can improve on, including yourselves? Being able to sort of balance that a little bit better?
It's very hard. From a business standpoint, you want to operate at maximum capacity. You would probably be better off to say, well, I'm going to operate at 90% capacity. The one thing that we have not been able to divine in the future is the growth of our market. And, we're just in 2 states in the District of Columbia, and heretofore, there hasn't been any local breweries selling this much beer in these small markets, or relatively small markets. And we just have not been able to keep up with that growth. And it's exceeding everybody's expectations. There's no way to really anticipate it. So it's been frustrating.
Sure. So for some of the brewers that are in our audience, since we're talking about challenges and potential mistakes, some of the brewers watching at home are here tonight. What are some of the pain points or watch-outs that you would sort of pass along to them and say, these are things that you want to be cautious of as you're growing, especially if you're growing rapidly, and rapid growth can mean many different things for different people.
Well, I don't think you should spread your market too thin. We've made a very conscious decision of trying to stay in a very small footprint until we do get capacity up, and we have seen others, spread out a little too thin and then have to retrench back. I mean, a lot of even the big breweries have done that over the years, and that goes with a lot of angst when that happens. So that would be one thing. Of course, a lot of this, a lot of people I sort of talk to about this say, well, that's a great problem to have. You mean you're selling everything you need? That's a great problem. I mean, that's what keeps me up at night, is not having enough beer. And, how long are we going to be able to ride this train? Who knows? But I think most of the folks are experiencing something similar. And it's a testament to the quality of what craft brewing is doing throughout the country, that we're just getting so many people adopting this wonderful beverage, and just seeing this amazing growth, that it's exciting, but it is challenging.
I would say be realistic about what you promise, especially to retailers. As we get more into the chain grocery and chain convenience, I mean, they're unforgiving channels if you can't fulfill the commitments that you've made, and so enter those with caution. And we haven't, until recently, we haven't even spearheaded the entry into those markets, and our wholesalers have done a great job there. And so some of that is communicating with your wholesalers and making sure they understand what your abilities are and your constraints are, so that they don't overpromise on your behalf. In the end, it doesn't matter who makes the promise. If it's your beer that's not on their shelf, then it's your fault.
Can we talk about something positive we've done for a while? I'm done with the negative stuff, okay?
But yeah.
No, kidding.
On that note,
Okay, good.
you guys both separately.
I'm sweating over here, man.
Well, it's not called the hot seat for nothing, right? So, in our conversations prior to this evening, both of you keyed on this idea of being Virginia's craft brewery, sort of as a It's just an idea that's driving you guys, you know, and part of that is that retail landscape, being able to access the key chain accounts, C-stores, grocery stores, having the production to keep up with their demands. But, you know, how have you guys been able to access those accounts even in just, you know, going into year 3 here on the production side, and how important have those channels been for your growth?
Extremely important. You know, how have we been able to access them? As I mentioned, you know, our wholesalers have helped us there, but I think one thing that's really been in their corner is the products that they have to offer. You know, Vienna Lager is the biggest piece of our portfolio. It makes up about 55 or 60% of sales, and it's a beer that's, you know, not necessarily well represented out there, and so they're not running to Kroger or Harris Teeter with another IPA to put on the shelf. They're running with a beer that you know, is underrepresented on the shelf, and so that makes it easier for those people to say yes. We've focused a lot, obviously, on our packaging and the way it looks on the shelf, and that helps quite a bit too. And then we're on top of all that able to talk about, you know, the national awards that are behind it. So it's not just us standing there saying, hey, I think this beer's really good. There's some objective feedback behind that.
Right. Not all of the smaller breweries that have quite the scale that you guys do are going to be able to access all of those channels maybe at the same in the same way that you guys do. So you might be able to get a statewide authorization or something for a grocery store or a C-store, but are there opportunities out there for the smaller brands to play in the space, but maybe not you know, at the same scale if they can't produce that amount? And you know, what are the strategies for accessing the larger grocery chains and the C-stores?
They do give you some local representation, and that's where we started with a lot of these guys. We're still in that with some of them. You know, more relevant to where you are and close to home, it seems to work effectively. So you know, their distributors are, if they have a distributor, if they're self-distributing, certainly that can be worked too. And you just need to go in there and make yourself relative to what's going on, and
so you make yourself relative with finding a niche in terms of a product offering, in terms of support that you can offer. I mean, how do you
you know,
yourself?
a lot of the buyers for the chains and in individual stores they can buy uniquely to their store, okay? And a lot of these guys are beer geeks in themselves, and they know the trends, and they know you know, who's making something that's good, and they want to have that in their store, and we've seen that over and over again. So there is an opportunity to get your foot in the door on some of those things, and similarly, what we did is we got our foot in the door, and we saw good results with those few stores we're in, and then you know, the folks higher up saw an opportunity for us to be on a wider stage, so to speak.
I mean, you have to pick your customers well too. A store like Whole Foods or Total Wine is a store that understands a lot more about, or not necessarily, I would say most major chains understand actually quite a bit about how craft brewers work these days, but they have patience where they'll take, you know, Whole Foods has local store authorization, so you can pick to be in one Whole Foods and don't have to be in every Whole Foods.
So they're just better set up for
Exactly.
smaller breweries.
They're willing to accept that you're not you may never want to be a statewide brewery. You may just want to be in four Whole Foods in Richmond or Virginia Beach, and they're fine with that. So that's a good way to go. The other thing I would say that we've had success with, and even as we're growing, you know, we're able to partner with, say, Star Hill, one of the other big breweries in the state, where if you can't do it necessarily yourself, go in with a local package. We've got in Walmarts around. We're on a shelf set that's not just us, but it's 4 or 5 other breweries. And so if you yourself can't necessarily support all of the volume, you know, bring your neighbors in.
Interesting.
You know, what you can do, you know, bringing everybody else in will get you in the door.
To buy local
and
program.
that's going to sell, you know, that's going to sell your beer to the extent that you're able
and
to
that's something
supply
you
it.
guys worked with the other breweries on.
Yes.
Yeah,
Through our distributors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
our wholesalers, and I share wholesalers with a lot of the folks in this room, and we have some wholesalers that are doing that very effectively, and we have some that aren't doing it at all.
Huh.
But, you know, it's awesome to see somebody like, Three Brothers, who I don't think you guys have statewide distribution at this point, but you're selling in Walmart in Lexington because you're part of a local package, and so the wholesaler can go, sell 4 placements that are local beers and let Walmart not worry about what the individual beers are in the set.
Does that require then that you all be with the same wholesaler? And
It
It
helps
does.
a lot.
Yeah, it does.
I'm not, yeah.
That's actually a really innovative way of approaching those larger accounts that on both sides, like even someone with Devil's Backbone type scale might not be able to support it, and they're not as interested in supporting only one brand in a
Exactly.
few stores.
And it's not just a small brewery thing. I can't do Sam's Club alone right now, but Star Hill actually found us the opportunity to do it with them. And so it works even for a bigger brewery where we can go in together, and it makes a better, stronger case to that buyer, to go in together.
That might actually be one of like the most real examples of a rising tide floating all boats
Yep.
that I've
Exactly.
actually heard. I mean, you hear the phrase tossed
All the
around a
time.
lot, but that really is a real life scenario where 4 of you guys have been able to access an account that you normally separately wouldn't have been able to.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Steve, you touched on it earlier. Financing has been just critical for your guys' development. Maybe walk me through, how important that's been for your guys' success. So just early on success, and what small brewers are able to accomplish maybe without all the added advantages of having the investment that you guys did.
Well, initially starting the brew pub, we were able to self-finance that project. Excuse me. I've been in business 30 years, so I had some access to capital from a lifelong building career, and I also got a partner who happened to be somebody that was interested in dumping some cash in some harebrained scheme, and it worked out for him. I can't emphasize enough having access, if at all possible, to angel investors, because really my main partner in this business is just that guy, and we have really 2 other people that are involved financing or putting money into this business, and one of them puts money in at 1% interest just because he's interested. He's an older guy. He's been very successful in his life, and he's interested in seeing something grow. He's happy to see, people get jobs, and that kind of person. That is an angel investor, and if you can find somebody like that through friends or family or community or whatever, it's something to grab hold of. At some point, you reach a critical mass where the banks really are interested, and we're talking to a lot of banks, and very gratified that they are interested in talking to us about loaning money. I think the bankers all went to some seminar somewhere that said invest in craft breweries, because they're all
I think it was the
sniffing around.
Brewbound.
That's why that's why the bankers are here tonight.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's what they did. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure. But because hey, man, these guys are growing, and this is great. And the funny thing is, being in the construction business my whole life, I've had great success with that and met many great people. But construction's sort of cool. It's nice. But craft beer, man, that's just great. And those bankers, man, when they get around you, boy, they just love it, man. They just and same with like Sam from town here. Everybody, the community, the board of supervisors, everybody. When you say beer, everything changes, and they want to be part of it because it is such a fun, neat thing to be part of. So, there are a lot of advantages, small business loans, different things that are out there that can help somebody that's just getting started in the business. Unfortunately, you gotta pretty much sign your life away, all your assets and everything to get those loans. You're just gonna have to build it. Again, had I been 30 years younger, I probably would not have been able to do this. I wouldn't have had the horsepower behind me to get this thing started. But maybe find, like I said, find some people that believe in what you're doing and get them to help you get started.
Right. Has that been really critical for you guys, having that capital to hire some of the key people that are in your organization? Because that you said has been a really big piece.
It sort of goes afterwards. It's really critical to get the infrastructure. You know, we built all the buildings that we have. We didn't go in and get an existing building. And that, I think, has been important to some of our success, because the building here is very dedicated to being a brewery. And, you know, we have separate rooms for the brew house, for the cellar, for the packaging. And just the logic of that, I think, helps instill some culture and improve efficiencies and all those other things. But
The roofs are the height the roofs are, because
yeah.
that's how tall the tanks are. You know, we're not trying to squeeze things
Yeah.
into something that doesn't fit.
You know, and we probably spent maybe a little more than we probably could have on the equipment. You know, we used Rolec, which is a German engineering and brewery manufacturing company, and they're really top shelf. In my business plan, and I did this quite by accident, I aligned the breweries that I really liked and respected and that I aspired to be, and one was Victory, Lagunitas, Stone, Firestone Walker. And I said, what do these guys have in common? And I started looking. They all got Rolec brewing systems. Well, why is that? Why is that? And then, you know, as I dug deeper and deeper into it, I said, well, these things are incredibly efficient. You know, they produce amazing beer. But what, more importantly, what they had was they had a staff of people that would support you through the whole process. Today, right now, we've got a dozen Germans working on all our process piping and doing the installation of all this stuff, because it is so specific to this type of industry that we're building here. Unfortunately, we couldn't really find local skilled craftsmen to do this, and we certainly couldn't find local engineers that understood, and I'm not saying they're not here in the country, I couldn't find them, that understood things like, you know, cubic feet per minute, those type of things that you have to do in the process piping, where you're not going to have things slow down and not work effectively and efficiently when you're moving beer, you know, certain distances and your different materials. So that's pretty important.
Your phone's going to be ringing off the hook tomorrow with American engineers calling you up.
Yeah. You know, I started out my business wearing my tools. I've got 4 carpenters that work for me that have been with me over 20 years. I do believe in America, but you know what? If you want to do something exceptional, you got to go find the guys that know how to do it.
And that's been worth every penny you've spent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So, a couple final questions here, and then if anyone has any questions in the audience, we can kind of throw around the mic a little bit. What are the qualities that will help ensure you guys continue to have this growth that you guys are on, this pace that you are on? And I like this question because I think it's something that everybody can take away, even if they're not, you know, growing quite as fast. There are, you know, things that you can identify in your business that really contribute to that. So what are the qualities that will help keep Devil's Backbone growing at such a rapid pace?
Number one is the people. Absolutely, number one is the people. We've been, you know, what I have found fascinating about this industry and this business, and particularly here in Virginia, which I think is sort of late to the game, is we all of us in the brewing business have created an industry that has been not at the forefront in Virginia. There's been some great craft breweries here in years past, but we've got an explosion of things going on right now. And what's incredibly gratifying to me is we had native Virginians who wanted to be in this business, but it wasn't really here, and they've gone out of the state to do things. 2 examples is my lead brewer here, Nate Allwine, Virginia Tech grad, food science major, UC Davis Brewing School guy, was working for Victory. We just hired a guy for quality control. He was working with Left Hand Brewing Company in Colorado. And here these guys are now saying, hey, I can move home again. I can do what I know, you know, that I'm really good at, and I can come home again. And so these guys are coming back, and they are a critical aspect for us in our success. And we're real happy to have these guys. People.
Since we're calling people out, we got to call April out as well, who moved back from the
Yeah,
West Coast.
there's another one.
To come home to Virginia.
April came back from the West Coast.
But if there is anyone watching out in the world, they've met April, because she's met
she
everyone.
knows everybody. But so people, number one, obviously relationships with not only the people that distribute your beer, but certainly your customers, you know, and that's important. And We try never to miss out on supporting our communities wherever possible, and we do a ton of that work, and that makes a lot of sense, the give back kind of thing.
Right.
We're pretty constantly critical of our own business as well, which I think is really important to keep a realistic view on what you're doing. I mean, Steve can drive us crazy occasionally. We can have the best month of Vienna Lager sales ever and come in and be like, we need a new flagship. And we don't go get a new flagship, but it does make us sit down and think, what if, or what's next, or what, how do we stay ahead? How do we keep innovating?
Relative.
What's the
Relevant.
worst case scenario right now? And it just keeps us on our toes all the time.
You hear the bubble talk, the bubble. And, there's a lot of stuff going on in the craft brewing world right now, and it does make you pause and think. But, the way I look at it, rightly or wrongly, is, you see places like Oregon, Washington State, Colorado, California, craft beer represents 25-30% of the beer that's being sold. Virginia, I think it's somewhere in the 8 or 9% range. And nationally, it's in that 7% range. So we feel confident that this business has a lot of room for growth for not only us, but for a lot of people in the business. And we want to support that every way we can. We want to support the whole industry every way we can. Hayes and I every year go up and with the, the Brewers Association up on the Hill, and are arguing for tax relief and things of that nature, which
It hasn't worked yet.
It hasn't worked yet.
Yeah.
Tough time to ask for tax relief,
Yeah.
but I think it's important to be involved and support the business as a whole, and love your fellow breweries. Love your fellow brewers.
Well, I got to say that I love that you brought up sort of the whole vision of craft's future, because that was going to be my final question.
I knew that.
I
knew that.
Hey.
I
Well,
could see what it was.
Well, once you close it up, you know what question's coming. What is your vision of the craft segment in 5 years? Where do you see things going for everybody? I think the last thing I saw for the BA was like 2,900 was the last one that they wrote in one of their last write-ups. So 2,900 craft breweries now, another 1,700 plus in planning. Where are we headed?
We're not really soothsayers, and we're certainly not near as sophisticated as some of the other folks in the industry, the bigger folks that have been at this for a very long time and have probably a better divining rod than we do as where the industry goes. And we do pay attention to what those people say, and we try to get a feel for what's going on in our area. And, the glass is half full. I'm just an optimist. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. The brew pub would have never been built, and we would have never started on this road, and we would have never done this phase 2 expansion. We wouldn't be talking right now about phase 3 expansion starting up in a few weeks.
Wow.
So I think being an optimist and not really analyzing what the downside is one key to success possibly, and maybe one to failure too. But I have a lot of optimism in where this industry's going. So.
Hayes, how about Hayes' vision of craft in 5 years?
If we hit our target today, then that's a good day. That's literally, I have no idea where craft's going, and all we can do is, it really, I guess the bottom line is it really doesn't matter where craft is going necessarily. There's always room in every market for good products from companies who are doing it right. So even if craft is maxed out today, the mission for us remains the same, right? Best product every day, done in the right way. And so if craft's got a huge ceiling and tons of room to grow, that's going to work for us. And if it doesn't, then we still need to do the same thing, which is, top quality processes and beer every day.
Right.
Which is like a very nerdy answer, I guess. But
We expect
Well,
doesn't surprise
you're the
anybody.
numbers
Yeah.
guy, right?
Yeah.
That's why Steve brought you in, right? The nerdy numbers guy.
Yeah, it is. I know how Excel works.
Awesome. Well, speaking of numbers, it's about 7 o'clock. I think some folks probably want to have another beer and maybe enjoy some conversation, but thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks for coming.
How about a
thank
round of
you
applause
guys.
for these
Thank
guys?
you. Thank you.
one final thing before we sign off. This whole tour now, coming to an end. Very special thanks to our sponsors, Vicinity and Crown. That this was a really fun trip for all of us to be on. Thank you again.
You got questions?
Are there a couple questions?
Oh, good.
Sweet. No questions? Well, I'll ask these guys questions at the bar. How about that? If you like what we did here, we put this sort of thing on for a full day. Hayes can tell you a little bit about it.
Awesome.
He's come to our events before, but we have a full day business conference called the Brewbound Session, May 29th in Boston. So hopefully we see some of you there. And let's get a beer. Cheers.
Cheers.